Call of Duty Warzone's new map is finally here. Ahead of the big deployment, we spoke to Amos Hodge, Creative Director at Raven Software, and Miles Leslie, Creative Specialist at Treyarch, to hear a bit more. Here's some excerpts from our interview. For the full thing, hit the link in the description.
So my natural first question, which would have been the same for most people, is that obviously in the past, you might have launched, we might have expected you to launch a new Battle Royale game with each kind of premium Call of Duty. So is the plan to keep evolving Warzone for years to come?
Yeah, we view Warzone as a live service. It's our free-to-play offering. We think of it as a way to bring in new players, get them acclimated to the universe. It's just a great offering for players. So we're trying to keep it live, continually updated. So that's the plan going forward. Free service, live, continual updates.
Yeah, I think we have a huge opportunity that, we're only really fully realizing between the two games is no one really can do that. And that comes with a lot of pressure to do it right. Between Warzone, right, and like Cold War specifically and the premium that you're saying. But there's a lot of cool stuff we could do there. Like Amos is saying, there's an evolution and an iteration of like, well, this could be cool that no one else can do except us. And that's really exciting of where we can take it into the future as well.
And so obviously Verdansk 84 finally kind of aligns the Warzone map with Cold War. But it's obviously arrived kind of some 6 months after the main game. Was that always the plan?
So with Warzone, we're in uncharted territory here, right? This is our first time doing free-to-play. It's our first time doing Battle Pass. It's our first time connecting to a second game. And so when we launched, we were careful not to take off more than we could do. So it was real important to us that players were connected across both games with progression and weapons, so that they could play either game and feel like they were making progress. We also want to connect the narrative and the story. So it's just like the reveal event where it's like, we're just trying this stuff out. This is the first time, right? So we're just experimenting and we're going to see how it goes. We think players will love it and we think they'll want more of it, but we don't know. So we're hoping this goes well. Players love the connection of the narrative. They love the gameplay, and we'll just keep doing more of it. But really, this is an experiment for us, to be honest. It's like, we really think it's the way to go. We really think players are going to love it, but it's just all about, first time. There's no other game that's doing this, and so it's just kind of crazy for us.
So I mean, obviously, in the world of a kind of a live service game, which can change drastically, even week by week, how agile can you realistically be from a development perspective to react to kind of what players want from the game?
That depends on the content. So things like maps, like if Verdansk 84, that's not something you can do in 3 weeks. Right? That's not, but we can update weapon balance. We can put out a weapon balance. We can fix bugs. Game modes, depending on the scope, like you can do crazy game modes, but you can also do a smaller scope game mode a little quicker. So game modes are a little bit quicker, but anything that involves like art and animation, like a weapon pipeline, is really long. But we can make balance changes, but we can't make a brand new weapon super fast because there's art, there's animation, there's texture artists, there's sound, there's effects. Maps are the same way, but modes, weapons, balance changes, playlist changes, game mode changes, those things we can make faster and easier, and we tend to do that. Like with season 3, you'll see a shift in the meta. We plan to shift in the meta, shift away from burst guns, get the FFAR. We've been stomping on some of the SMGs lately, so bring that back so the SMGs can shine again. So
I was just going to say, I think a big part of this is that it takes time to play test and find the fun, and that's a huge part of this because, Amos, who is like 100% dialed into all the gameplay, like he's the dude, and he knows this, the rest of the team, is that even if you release something that's not fun, you're going to do more damage, right? Like that's the key for us, is like find the fun that players can strive and engage with. But there's also different types of fun, different types of player, right? Casual, hardcore, care about story, not care about story, multiplayer, zombies, Warzone. So we're constantly finding the right way to push each of those different players and see what they like, what they don't like, across both titles in that sense, right? Because that gives us a guiding, right? It's a compass. Oh, okay, they're liking this, they're liking that, and that constantly is an iterative process overall.
So on Verdansk, which elements of the old version of the map will you miss the most, and would you possibly consider bringing them back one day? You know, kind of perhaps as part of a limited time mode or something similar.
Yeah, which section would I miss the most?
That's a good question, by the way.
we put the standoff in the farm location. That's a tough call. I love the farms location, and I also love standoff. So it's like, how can we get both? So for me, it's that farms location that's kind of right in front of Gulag. It's right where standoff sits. It still kind of has the same vibe, but for some reason, I know farms wasn't like a big point of interest. It wasn't super popular. For me, it was the perfect mix of, there weren't too many players there for me, but there was enough loot. No, that's just for me personally. It's like, I don't like to go to the super high dense areas, but I don't like to go to the empty areas either. And so this had that little mix. You can get people, if you drop it early, you get people coming out of the gulag, get some easy kills. Maybe there's 1 or 2 teams there, not a lot, but you can gear up fast. And then if there's a helicopter nearby, you can usually get where you want to go. So that has been my go-to drop point that kind of got replaced.
Yeah, that's a hard one for sure. Like, I like the quarry and the death pit nature of it because I love like fast-paced CQB. So like that was my go-to spot, and now there's more cover, so it's like harder for me to mow down people, right? But it's the funny thing is now you've been playtesting 84 so much is now I like it, right? Because I'm finding new ways to slay in that sense, right? So I'm like, okay, all right, now I can own this area in a different way. So that's really hard. I do think players will be like, I could do this. But then they're going to find a new way to do that thing, like the gondolas, right, in Summit, right? The salt mines that have these little hills that you can climb. And I bet you they're going to be like, you know, what? Quarry what? You know what I mean? Damn, what? Like, this is the new hotness in that sense, because it offers so much new gameplay.
Yeah, that's a good point that you bring it up. Is like, although farms is where I'd like to drop, now I'm always dropping in Summit. Even if the farms was still there, I would still drop in Summit with the cable cars, and I don't know, I just love playing that.
The best, by the way, is that we have arguments of where like people like to drop internally, and that's when you know you've got something. When someone's like, no, it's best to go Summit. No, you're wrong. What are you talking about? You go salt mines, right? So that's when you know you've hit it, right? When everyone's mad at each other.
So you mentioned kind of transitioning from the burst meta with Season 3. So my question is, at which point do you consider a gun to kind of cross the line from being popular to overpowered and requiring action?
Yeah, so that's a combination of things, but mostly that is data driven. So we actually have data, so we know how many players are using the weapon. We look at what players put in their loadout kits when they collect their loadout kit. And so we collect this data, and then we have like a range. You know, it's like, okay, if above X% of players are using this, then it's out of control, right? So we have a range of not just each gun, but each class. You know, it's like we don't want, you know, if like 80% players were all using SMGs, okay, we got a problem, right? And then you can dig in, okay, or 80 of those percent of those players, or 70% of them all using one SMG. So we really look at the numbers, and then we look at the community sentiment. Too, we take that into account. So with so many guns, we're I don't know exactly, we're nearing on close to 100, if not we haven't passed it by now. So there's always going to be 1 or 2 that are best and that form the meta. But we want to make sure that we're constantly changing that so the meta doesn't get stale and boring. Like, you know, if the meta was still the M4 from when we launched, you know, it would be boring. So we know there's always going to be 1 or 2 guns that are in the meta. It's usually like a long range gun and a short range gun. So there's usually 2 guns in the meta at all time. And we want a meta. We want people to know and learn experience, but we don't want it to set too long. So our goal is to about every season launch now is kind of our goal. You know, we may not hit that. You know, no one's perfect, and you know, it's design. It's not like a science. It's an art. But our goal is to try and shift up the meta at every season launch, and then we'll fix bugs and kind of let it sit, see where it goes. And hopefully it gets stable and lasts for, you know, a good half a season, you know, because people are trying to figure out the first half of the season what's going on. Hopefully it'll settle. The next season we can change it up. You know, our seasons are 2 months long, so we figured that's a good amount of time for like a meta to evolve, settle, players get comfortable with it, and then ready for the new one. So that's kind of our goal, but we're very data driven. We also have community feedback too. So we're always looking at the stats.